Welcome. This is the Liv Lurra II. Hey bike geeks, from weight to wheels, price to performance, we're here to take a close look at bicycles so you can make an educated decision when selecting your next bike. In today's video, we're looking at the new 2024 Liv Lurra II. Starting with some numbers. This Liv Lurra II that we're looking at is the size small with 29-inch wheels, and it weighs 30.4 pounds. That is a pretty respectable weight in the hardtail mountain bike market these days, especially considering this is a bike with a 130mm travel fork and a pretty modern progressive geometry. Most other bikes in this sort of category, and bikes I'm thinking of, are things like the Trek Roscoe, the Marin San Quentin 29, or the Rocky Mountain Growler, tend to be a fair amount heavier because they are made for absolutely burly riders doing burly things. In this particular case here, this Liv Lurra is a modern geometry, but not so modern and not so hardcore that it has to be heavy, and this is actually a beautiful geometry if you're a lady on a budget that doesn't allow you to get into full suspension, but you want to spend your money really well to get on a bike that's going to give you as much performance as absolutely possible for your budget. And when I say your budget, what I'm talking about in the case of a Liv Lurra is this Lurra II being about $16.99. There is also a Liv Lurra I, which is a step up in components, but still with the same frame and fork setup. That one goes to about $2,100 in Canada. If you're in the United States, for whatever reason, you guys are still stuck with the 2023 version of this, which I notice is on sale on the Giant USA website, and you can get that for about $1,500 US or $1,350 if you happen to be a size extra small or small. And much of what you see in this video is still going to apply, with the exception of the exact names of some componentry, like the drivetrain, but otherwise still a very applicable video if you're just trying to learn about one of those Liv Lurras that you have available in the States. So, if you're new to these videos, my name is Graham. That's what a bike shop owner looks like. I own a bike shop in Cochrane, Alberta, Canada. I haven't combed my hair today, so I might look like an idiot, and I am not an aspiring YouTuber. I just like to get information out to people who are trying to buy bikes and do it sensibly and with some actual background information behind them. And so I film these videos, I show close-ups of the details on the bike, and I talk about the details that matters, maybe shortcomings, and I try to be as honest as possible while being a bike shop owner and still making my living off of selling the things that I film. As I say that, there are a number of models from bike companies that we carry that I don't bother to bring in because I am overall just not a huge fan of particular bikes. So if I do a video of a bike, that means it's a bike that I've pulled out of stock. That means I've already vetted it from a whole bunch of bikes from that particular brand, and there are going to be reasons that I think that the bike is worth buying and it is the right bike for some sort of customer. So we are going to get into this Liv Lurra II, and for all of you who have lasted even this long into the video, you may as well subscribe and like, because you are a special kind of bike nerd and you have a special kind of patience for listening to people rambling on about bicycles. So specifications, I'm going to go over that relatively quickly. Some specifications. This bike comes in 5 different sizes, from extra small up to a large, and remember, these sizes are aimed at women. So that large is topping out at about a 5'11" suggested size, and the extra small in this is starting at about 4'11". And I wouldn't be surprised if a smaller rider than 4'11" could ride an extra small in this bike quite comfortably. This is also essentially the same bike components wise as the Giant Fathom 2. with this Liv Lurra II giving a special color, giving us a women's specific saddle that I believe is called the Liv Silva saddle. It's written there. My camera probably can't show it. And things like the handlebar width being 760 millimeters on these bikes as opposed to the 780 on the Fathom. There are also, to be more women's specific, once we get down into some sizes that actually cross over with the Fathom sizes, there are some minor differences in things like head tube measurement and reach. And so this is not just a case of a different paint job on a Fathom and then adding two more small sizes at the bottom. This is a fully separate bicycle that just happens to be in the same category and sharing some things with the Fathom. On this particular bike, we're looking at a Shimano Q's 1x10 drivetrain. The Q's is a relatively new drivetrain for Shimano. I see a lot of ads for it as I'm watching bike videos on YouTube, but I don't know if that's just because I'm such a bike nerd that I watch that many videos that they decide to feed that to me. But what Q's is a new level that basically crosses over or helps to replace some of the entry-level Shimano Dior stuff. So that should tell you then that this is the start of actual performance level drivetrain bits and pieces. They make Q's in 9, 10, or 11 speed. They do some special things with Q's, largely to do with this link glide thing here, which actually make for more durability, long-lasting wear of cassettes, chains, chain rings. So this whole link glide thing that they're using, that was developed, as far as I can tell, with the idea of e-bikes in mind. And I think once they had it designed, they realized, I'm sure a lot of people, especially if you're trying to stretch your dollar in a bike like this, wouldn't mind having a drivetrain that's going to last twice as long as the outgoing Dior drivetrain that it replaces. Of importance, we've got a clutch on here, clutch off, clutch on. The whole idea of having an off position here is so if you get a flat and you have to take off a wheel, you have a way that you're not going to be battling against a whole bunch of chain tension. This whole system is designed then to give you a really good off-road drivetrain. That extra tension of your clutch is giving you extra tension in your chain, combined with a narrow wide tooth profile, which is just a shape of chainring teeth. All of these things tied together for giving you a chain and a drivetrain that when you're riding off-road, you are way less likely to actually have your chain bouncing off the chainring on the front here, which would have been more common on old school drivetrains. The 10-speed cassette in this case has a range from 11 to 48 teeth. So compared to the 10-speed Dior drivetrain, this gains 2 more teeth. So it's got a little bit of a better hill climbing gear on here. So not only are you getting a little bit longer lasting cassette rings, but you're also getting that 1148, which is getting you that much closer to sort of a full modern 1150 or 51 of what we would see on 12-speed stuff. These rims here are 30 millimeters wide, tubeless compatible, and they are actually set up tubeless from the factory from Giant. So that's a tubeless valve. These tires, Maxxis Aggressor, 29 by 2.5. This is going to be a highlight of this bike. And so one of my theses when I talk about this bike is the fact that I think that this is an excellent starting point for a lady that wants to get into mountain biking. And that comes down to the drivetrain is going to give a wide enough range of gears that you're going to have as good a time climbing hills as you can expect to have. The fact that we've got wide rims, I'll try and pronounce words properly, tubeless valve, and really good tires means that you're going to be able to ride those tires really nice and soft, and you're going to get excellent traction, and that's going to be a big confidence booster. It is hard talking about anything to do with genders these days to not be accused of mansplaining or of other sorts of things, but I would say there are certain things that we hear a lot, and those things are often women being not that interested in spending that much money, often with a male partner who is hardcore into mountain biking and trying to convince a partner that she should try mountain biking with him and she should spend $800 and she's going to have a great time. She will not. This is the first sort of price point where you're actually getting proper performance if you're actually going to go mountain biking. That proper performance comes down to proper one-by drivetrain, proper tires that you'll be able to ride at under 20 psi, get really good performance, extra confidence, which is very important, and extra traction. Getting into an actual dropper seat post on a bike. This is going to be really important. A couple out riding a bike with him on his full suspension bike and her on a rigid, hell-handling, entry-level hardtail with no dropper post and a front derailleur and stuff. How do you expect that person to really have a good time? There will not be confidence. There's going to be discomfort. Gears are going to not be fun to deal with. So please, this is your how to buy a bike, male or female, if you actually want to get into mountain biking, and if you don't have a full suspension budget, this is the level to look at. Going back to the cranks on here, these are the Shimano Q's cranks. Once again, as implied before when we were talking about the derailleur, these are pretty much a Dior level of crank. They use external bottom bracket bearings, which means that our bearings are actual proper quality. My only knock on these would be that down in the size extra small is the only size where we see a 165 millimeter version of this crank used, and then it steps up in a size small into using 170s, which to me doesn't really make sense when the size small of a giant Fathom 2 I think steps down into the shorter cranks, and that small is more like the equivalent of a medium in the Lurra. A neat thing to look at, or important thing to look at, this tiny little length of head tube here. So that combined with that 130 millimeter fork there means we've got a good amount of travel on the fork, but we're trying to keep this standover height as low as practically possible. So that is why this head tube is so short, is to allow for a long travel fork, but trying to keep this standover height really good. This is about the level of bike where we start to consider geometry, and as you've heard me talking about geometry already and the fact that a cheap bike will have a bad geometry, this has what I would call the perfect, I want to get into mountain biking geometry, because it's slack enough to get the benefits of being slack, but not so slack that you're going to have to actually take a bunch of lessons and relearn how to ride a bike to get the most out of your head angle. This is 66 degrees here. Seat angle on these bikes is 76.5 or 76 depending on the size, if I remember correctly. So the nice thing there is your wheel is going to be far enough ahead that you feel the confidence that while braking going down hills, you are not going to be pitched over the handlebars. But it is not a super hardcore enduro bike with a 63 degree head tube angle, for example, where that wheel is so far out front that you really need to have an aggressive riding position to get front wheel traction. So it is possible, and we see it relatively often. People who have good intentions of getting into mountain biking, they have a big budget, and so even though they're a beginner, they go out and they grab a super high-end enduro bike or something that really requires a super aggressive body position and riding style, and correct use of braking and all that sort of stuff to get the performance. And then they can't figure out why it just isn't that much fun for them, or that they're not getting the confidence that they thought having a big enduro bike would buy them. So this is really, really good combo of seat tube angle, head tube angle, the kind of reach that we have on here, the kind of stem length, the kind of handlebar width. These are all things that are going to add up to a bike that still feels like a bike, not like something foreign, but you can expect to have a really good time. You can go from beginner up to sort of entering into expert level rider, I think, on this general chassis, with the only thing that you would want to upgrade down the road being right at the tip of my finger there, and that would probably be the brakes. So, short travel dropper post on all these bikes, nice frame, light material. It's using Alex SL, as I alluded to. The brakes is the only place that isn't awesome, but that is reflecting the budget on this bike. These are perfectly fine brakes, they just aren't excellent brakes. Liv has put 180 millimeter rotors, front and rear, to help to give you a bit more braking power than if those would have been a very common 160 millimeter size. But yeah, a little bit more braking power is something that down the road is going to start to feel important. At the beginning, I think that these are going to do just fine. Handlebars, 760 wide, stem, I think 50 millimeters reach, 130 millimeter travel fork, and one of the other things that makes this really appropriate for a first bike for somebody actually getting into riding mountain bikes is that this has all the key features of an actual performance suspension fork, not just being a front wheel pogo stick. So those features are, that is the spring to an air cap right there. So this is an air sprung fork. You have compression adjustment, and by compression adjustment, it means in this setting here, you're going to be really, really plush. This setting here, it's going to be essentially locked out, and you do have some in-between settings that just give you different levels of firmness. I don't think that that is a huge deal. I personally don't use lockouts on forks, but the fact that it has it means that you do have some hydraulic control of how your fork moves. And then this red knob here tells you have hydraulic control of how it bounces back after it's been compressed. So this means you get proper performance. Set your air pressure with a shock pump to match your body weight so you get proper use of the range of motion. Set your rebound so you don't have a pogo stick or you don't have something that goes down and comes back super slowly, and you'll actually have some proper performance. So get this bike, make sure that the shop that you got it from put the tire sealant in. We always do, but just make sure that they did. Then you're going to be able to ride these tires at, if you're say appropriate for a size small, that means that you're likely going to be in the range of 5'3", 5'4", 5'5", something like that is probably the perfect sizing for a size small. You're probably pretty light. You'll be able to get away with riding your tires at say 19 PSI there, 18 PSI on the front, and your tires are going to do magic for you. They're really going to feel like they're hugging the ground. Your drivetrain is going to do all the things it needs to. Your handlebars are an appropriate width that you'll actually be riding with a modern riding technique, which will mean riding by leaning the bike a lot more than just by turning the handlebars. Get used to using your dropper seat post on here, and you're going to be well on your way to having a great introduction to actual mountain biking. So this has been a really unusual way to do a review. I've struggled. This is probably the 6th time I tried filming this tonight, but there's too many things to talk about at this level because I want to get the point across about what the individual components are, why they're important, but then also a little bit about, and I hate ever trying to talk people up into spending more money than they want to, but if you actually want to get into riding mountain bikes, set yourself up for success. This is the level. If you can't get up into, say, the low to mid $2,000 range to get a proper performing full suspension bike, at $1,700 in Canada, this will give you a bike with the weight, the tires, the gears, the dropper seat post, and the suspension that all will add up to a bike that gives you the proper feedback and will help you really fall in love with mountain biking, so that maybe in 2 years you're selling this to a friend and you are making total sense of getting into the full suspension version because you've had such a good experience. This is the Liv Lurra II, one of two Lurras in the lineup. It is probably my favorite. The other one is at $2,100 with a minor step up in the quality of gears and brakes, but otherwise the same frame and fork. This is an excellent way to get yourself, or if you're the dude with a partner, or to get your partner into and loving mountain biking. Thanks for checking this out. Have a great night. Happy trails, and subscribe and like if you watched this long, because you are a certified bike geek.